Hello, welcome to Bored and Confused, where I review shows based on two criteria. One, was I bored? Two, was I confused? Today's show is Music City, a new musical playing at St. Luke's Theater in Midtown Manhattan. Now, before I jump into this scrappy new musical, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me grow this channel and get press tickets to see new exciting shows like Music City, the new musical. So what did I know about this show going in? Honestly, I didn't know anything. One of my subscribers recommended it to me in a comment on this channel, and I always take your recommendations seriously. So I reached out to the press rep for the show and requested a press ticket. The show had already opened a few weeks back, but they were nice enough to give me a press ticket. So before I get into what the show is about, let's do a little background, because this one has a bit of a story behind it. Music City comes from two guys who have been friends since middle school back in Detroit, composer J.T. Harding and book writer Peter Zinn. Harding is a legit hit songwriter. His songs have been recorded by people like Blake Shelton, Kenny Chesney, Keith Urban, Uncle Kracker, and Darius Rucker. So the way this all came together is Zune, who'd moved to New York and was working as an actor and director, got a CD from a mutual friend with one of Harding's songs on it called How Did I Get Here?, about Harding's experience performing for troops in Afghanistan. Harding and Zinn talked about this song, and Harding told him that he should be the one to turn it into something, and he'd handle the music, and that's how they started building this show together. Now, the show actually premiered back in November 2024 in a small space on the second floor of a church on the Upper West Side, and it did well enough to extend 3 separate times before closing in March of 2025. It was supposed to transfer to Off-Broadway this past spring, but that got pushed back because of some legal issues. It finally landed here at St. Luke's this past June, and along the way, it picked up 2 Drama Desk nominations, including Outstanding Musical, plus an Off-Broadway Alliance nomination for Best Musical. So this isn't some random vanity project. It's had some real development behind it. And for what it's worth, no, the lead character of TJ in the play is not named after J.T. Harding. Turns out that's just a coincidence. So what is the show about? Music City is set in a dive bar near Nashville called the Wicked Tickle, and it centers on TJ, a singer-songwriter who, along with his brother Drew, writes songs and performs them at an open mic there, both of them dreaming of becoming successful songwriters and performers. Into the picture comes 23, yes, her name is 23, a young singer-songwriter who also wants to write songs and make it big. She's got a mother who's a former singer-songwriter herself, but her mother is now struggling with addiction. And she kind of got chewed up and spit out by the music business and is a little traumatized by that. Then a talent agent with a major record label named Leanne wanders into the bar. She hears TJ playing and wants a demo of his songs so she can pitch them to her client Stucky Styles, a country star who's been around a long time. But he's fallen out of favor a bit, but is still a really big name. The problem is TJ and Drew don't have the money to record a demo, so they agree to start delivering drugs to meth addicts to pay for the studio session. Choices. So that is the setup. That's basically the first 15 minutes, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything there. Now, the show itself describes itself as an intimate, gritty take on the world of, quote, beers, guitars, sawdust, and sunshine, end quote. Set in an East Nashville bar that serves up cheap beer, open mics, and dreams of big breaks, where the regulars pursue love and music in the face of addiction, poverty, and haunting pasts. And yes, there is a love story between TJ and 23 along the way. Now, I'll leave where that goes for the spoiler section. Let's talk about some positives and negatives. First of all, positives. I love that this piece is done immersively. It's the kind of story that should be done this way. It's set in a dive bar, and they've turned St. Luke's into a dive bar as well as a front of a little trailer. And funny enough, the last show that played in this space was Bo the Musical, which was also set in a dive bar. So apparently, if you've got a show set in a dive bar, St. Luke's is the theater for you. I loved how the set looked. It felt very authentic. I liked the way the actors were staged to move around the audience. And almost everyone in this cast, with few exceptions, is a singer, an instrumentalist, and an actor. It's a really impressive cast across the board. Great musicians, great singers, great actors. For me, the main reason to see this show is to see these performers. And also, these songs are all very good, but to see these performers perform these really good country pop songs is the reason to go see this show. They're written by J.T. Harding, who's a prolific singer-songwriter with songs recorded by big pop country names, as I mentioned earlier. And now I'm not a huge pop country aficionado, and so some of these songs sounded familiar to me, but I wasn't sure if I'd actually heard them before or if they were just reminding me of other songs in this genre. But for this genre, these songs are all very well crafted. There's some genuinely great lyric writing, and a lot of these songs are more complex than what you'd expect from a typical 3 or 4 chord country pop song. The guitar playing is really solid across the board too. I swear everyone in this cast plays the guitar well. And a lot of the score sounds like it was written on a guitar, so that all tracks. So positives are the cast and the scenic setting. And somewhere in the middle between positive and negative is the direction, because sometimes it really worked for me. Moving the bodies around the space I thought worked well. I thought the set design was fantastic, but sometimes the direction had the actors feeling kind of static and just standing in a line on the stage for long stretches. My biggest negative critique is that this is clearly a jukebox musical, and it's a jukebox musical built from songs that I'm not really familiar with. And J.T. Harding has basically pulled from his own catalog, and book writer Peter Zinn has built a story to hold space for all of these songs. And all of the songs in the show are diegetic, meaning they're performed as songs within the story. Someone gets up at the open mic and says, "Here's a song I wrote," and then they sing it. And that structure gives the book plenty of room, since every character is some kind of singer-songwriter who's either working on something new or performing an old chestnut. My understanding is Harding did rework some of the lyrics to better fit the narrative and even wrote some new songs, but let's be honest, it's still a jukebox musical. These songs weren't written specifically to move this story forward or reveal something about these characters. It's reversed. The book was written to house these songs. So even though I enjoyed the songs, I kept wishing they were more specifically tied to what was happening in the narrative. They were tangentially related. You know, a love song would be sung by characters falling in love, but the songs lacked the specifics to the actual situation that would really make it feel like musical theater. Sometimes a song wouldn't really comment on the plot at all, and that still worked as a "here's a song I used to sing" moment, but I kept longing for these songs to have more to do with the story in a very precise, thought-out way. It also feels like there are over 20 songs in the show. I think J.T. Harding loves his babies maybe a little too much and could have cut some of them. Because there are so many songs, the narrative runs long. It's essentially a boy gets girl, loses girl, gets girl back story. But once that resolves, I thought the show was about to wrap up, and instead it just kept going for another 15 or 20 minutes, which felt a little self-indulgent. I think the show could stand to lose a good half hour, especially since it's in an off-Broadway, site-specific piece that doesn't feel like it really wants to be 2.5 hours. It feels like it wants to be just one act. When intermission came along, I was actually surprised there was an intermission, since we were already an hour and 20 minutes in, and I thought we were close to wrapping it all up. I then figured the second act would be really short and only run 30 to 40 minutes, but instead it was another full hour of material. The book is very dramatic, maybe melodramatic, and creates real moments for the actors where they can really dig in emotionally. But it often felt contrived to me. There's a recurring disconnect in the writing where a problem will present itself, and instead of taking any of the 20 logical ways to solve it, the story consistently chooses the most extreme dramatic option available. It feels less like organic hurdles and more like forced plot contrivances designed solely to manufacture high stakes among the characters. So, was I bored? Was I confused? You know, these are kind of two sides of the same coin. The contrivances and my disbelief in them kind of go hand in hand. I didn't buy the characters were in a tight spot as the show wanted me to think, so I wasn't really invested in the story, and it felt like the plot existed mainly to make room for more songs. And since I'm not invested in the story, even really beautiful songs start to wear on me if they're not moving the plot forward in a way I care about. That's where a little boredom creeps in, because I'm not really invested in these characters. And on the same side of that coin, was I confused? Yeah, for the same reason. I didn't always believe the choices the characters were making. I was aware of a book writer trying to drum up some drama. And you know, these characters are just people who like to go to extremes. Okay, here's the spoiler section. Skip ahead to the next section if you want to go into the show not knowing where it's headed. You've been warned. Here we go. At its core, this is a boy gets girl, loses girl, gets girl back story. TJ and 23 fall for each other. There's a stretch where it looks like he might lose her, and then he gets her back. It resolves happily for the two of them, and here's my spoiler. It's an adjacent structural complaint. Once he gets 23 back, I was ready for the show to wrap up, but instead it kept going for another 15 or 20 minutes because apparently being a couple brings its own new set of problems, especially since he joined the military. And the show seemed like it had found a place to end, but it still had more songs that the composer wanted to include. Okay, end of spoilers. So let me wrap this up. Was I bored? Was I confused? Well, yes to both, honestly. But I am still glad I saw the show. I really enjoyed it, even though I think it could have been shorter, maybe a full half hour shorter. I mainly enjoyed it because the performers are so wonderful and the music is really great. And early on, I realized this was kind of going to be a bit of a soap opera. So I lowered my expectations of the book and was just able to sit back and enjoy it. So if the idea of an immersive dive bar with performers singing great songs live inches from you, moving around the space, if this appeals to you and you're not as picky as I am about plot logic, maybe you're someone who loves a good soap opera and think that a general dramatic idea is enough to keep you invested, then I think you'll really enjoy the ride. And you might even shed a tear or two. I probably would have felt more emotions myself if the show had been a bit tighter, because by the end, I was less concerned with how it resolved than I was just wanting it to resolve quickly. I got to a point where I really didn't care if a character lived or died. I just wanted a choice to be made. Tragic ending, happy ending, I didn't care. Let's just wrap it up. You may be feeling the same way right now. So, this is a really great opportunity to get familiar with J.T. Harding's music with a genuinely excellent cast. Special shout out to Leenya Rideout, who plays Tammy and Leanne, two characters, the music exec and the mother of 23. She's really incredible. She gets a lot of the really dramatic material to carry, and her vocals are really excellent. Her acting is strong, and she even pulls out a violin and a guitar and a banjo and plays all three with skill. Everyone in this cast is strong, but also want to shout out Julianne B. Merrill, who plays the bar's owner and MC, is also the music director. She also gets a lovely solo of her own, and she did a great job with making the music really sparkle. The drummer even gets a moment to shine too. Really, everyone in this ensemble gets to sing something. And I also have to give it up to Andrew Rothenberg, who plays both Bakerman and Stucky Styles, a drug dealer and the country music star. And my first reaction to Bakerman was, wow, this actor has made some big character choices. But then when I saw him in the completely different, equally distinctive character as Stucky Styles, I had to take my hat off to him for making such a strong distinction that really made these two characters feel like very different people, like I was watching two separate actors. So across the board, this act is fully committed. As our leads, let me just shout out their names because they were great too, and I don't want to ignore them. As 23, Lauren, Lolo, Pritchard, and as TJ, Stephen, Michael Spencer. So across the board, this cast is fully committed. They're right up in your face, totally exposed, no room to hide. And I am very impressed by that. And they really are just putting themselves out there. So the reasons to see this show: go see this show for the incredible talent. Go see it to hear these great songs. Go just to have a really interactive, intimate, theatrical experience. So that's Music City, a new musical. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. If you saw it when it was Uptown or if you saw it at St. Luke's. And let me tell you where you can get your tickets. I was fortunate enough to get a press ticket, and I was seated at a table right in front of the stage. There's mostly it's table seating, but there's some riser seating in the back. So if you don't want to be right in the thick of it, having to make contact with the actors and having to turn around to find people performing behind you, there are these seats further back and raised where you can kind of take in the whole space without twisting in your seat. And there are cheap tickets right now available for this. If you go on TDF, there are tickets for $37.50. And there's also an in-person rush for $35 available 1 hour before curtain. I think if you go on a weekday, you'll probably have a good chance of scoring one of those tickets. So thank you for watching, and I hope you're not bored or confused by anything you see. Bye.
Don't wanna drift away, we wanna stay